Hello everyone. Thank you for joining me once again. Today we're doing the accompanying lesson/analysis for last week's The Promise. The piano analysis is going to be super quick because there's just not that much to it. So let's get right into it. Piano time. Let's just refresh our memory and listen to a real quick snip of it. Be right about there. So the beginning is nothing more than jumping right into the chorus. And there's just 3 chords. Actually, the chords in this song are in totality C, G, A minor, D minor, and F. That's it. Those are all the chords. So in this first section, which, as I said, is the chorus, it's just C, G, A minor. That's it. That's the chorus right there. Then we jump into the verses. Let's refresh our memory on that. So right there, we're right into the A minor, D minor, F. That's it. Those are the verse chords. And then we go into the chorus, which I've already showed you because that's just C, G, A minor. Ooh, I did a fancy there. So C, G, A minor. So that's one thing I want to point out. This song is a masterclass into taking a very simple chord progression and a great melody by Simon, I'm sure, and great lyrics, and adorning the hell out of it, right? Between the guitar and the keyboards and just all the spaciousness that the production affords. And of course, Mark Egan's amazing bass line, it just pushes it right along. At the same time, gives you this real ethereal, spacious, just amazing, like a fantasy land kind of a thing happening, right? Okay, I'll stop myself right there. So we're pretty much done with the piano analysis because those are the chords. All right, now before we jump into bass, here's what I want to do. I just want to point out a fun little thing here. I mentioned this in one of the comments, but I'd like you guys to hear this clip from a Mark Egan interview with Richard Niles. That's the channel. Let's listen.
And about maybe a month later, I was in Paris for 6 weeks recording the album Arcadia, So Red the Rose. And it's so funny because I recently saw an interview by Nick Rhodes, the keyboard
Yeah,
player with him, and he was talking about when he first met me at the sessions in France, in Paris.
right.
And he said, Alex recommended this bass player, Mark Egan, this guy plays like he's from Mars or so. I said, oh, wow. So I guess compared to what they had been used to, and John Taylor is a great bass player. I love John Taylor's
Yeah,
work. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
he grooves so hard. He's great, came up with great bass parts, but it was so different from them because I came in and I was, had been playing with Gil Evans at that point. I was right in the middle with Gil and
So there it is. I just thought that was really clever and, well, really funny, actually. So anyway, all right, let's move on to bass time. All right, quick technical note. I've upgraded my camera for doing these segments, and I think it looks pretty good. So I was just using a, standard webcam, didn't really look so great in low light. And so, yeah, finally got myself another little Sony similar to the one I have upstairs. Not as fancy as that one, but I think it'll do the job for these less formal lessons we're doing here. Okay, so I gotta admit, I'm a bit overwhelmed because, as I said in the performance, and this is like an orchestral piece. There's not a lot of parts that repeat. and I don't want to make this an hour long. So I've been struggling with, well, how am I going to approach this? So I think I'll just play it by ear and, hopefully not belabor this too much and keep it interesting and keep it fun. So let's just start at the beginning. So let us backtrack here and just start at the beginning with those chorus chords. Let's refresh our memory. So we're right at the beginning there, and as I said, the chords are C to G to A, and the bass is pretty much following those notes. Excuse me here, I'm gonna lay out my sheet music, just my rough guide here. And even then, even with Mark just doing these basic intros, there's a really cool progression here. He goes, and there's kind of a soft touch there to kind of just keep that note going. And then he goes, so an E back down to the C, and then he does a funky. Then it kind of just does a back to the, and then here are our two pickup notes to the first verse. So just E, G, A. And so let's talk about the verses, because the verses are just wildly different. The first verse is a little more consistent. Now, if you were playing this song in a cover band, I know that's a stretch. I've never heard of Arcadia being played in a cover band aside from maybe Election Day. I would probably just teach somebody to do this basic first verse thing, which is so what we have to keep in mind here is that the drum pattern is relying heavily on that 16th note pickup. So like boom, boom, boom. I'm not saying that's exactly what he's doing, but that's the feel. And of course, the hi-hats are giving us that. So even though it's a straight kind of doom, ta, we do have that. And like I've said before many times in my videos, keep that in your head. Keep that. And in this song, even though it's kind of like a dreamy song, you get that juxtaposition of these 16ths and it actually being pretty damn funky, especially on the bass guitar. So if you keep that in mind, the da-doom, da-doom, and you let your fingers sort of flow into that, you're going to go into and the notes are A and then chromatic up to that D, and then kind of a slide because we're on fretless, A down to the F. You can get a little funky there, and then G to G sharp. But again, with a little ghost note there, because we're sort of mimicking that 16th note pickup, right? So that's the big takeaway. The feel is accomplished by having that 16th note rhythm in your head and doing that pickup, the and, before the one, right? That kind of a thing. So we repeat that a couple of times, and then comes one of the signature licks, right? Because at the end of one of those, on the F, we go to a high F. We go 2 octaves up. So, and that's just 4 notes, but they sound so magical because they're on the fretless. F, E, D, C. All natural, as if you're in the key of C, which we're kind of in the key of A minor, same thing. You could also make life a little easier and kind of do it like this, so that you're not stretching your hand out too much. But for consistency, I usually just try to keep it on 1 string. And obviously on fretless, you know, intonation is something you need to keep in mind. This is not a fretless lesson, specifically because I still don't really consider myself a fretless player. I'm getting better, so I will give myself a little credit. But so that's the signature lick. And then we repeat that, kind of repeat more or less the same, you know. But the second time, we're going to do that high lick, and then there's a bit of difficulty here because we're going, and then we're going to go. So it's D, C, A, D, C, A, C, A, C, and you're going to need to be quick. Like, if you can't do it, you know, fake it till you make it, you could just go, or you could just go, you know, something just to make it a little different and let it lead into the next part. So after that, we're into what I'm going to call the bridge. And remember, the bridge is A. Actually, I just thought of this. I didn't really go into this in the piano section either. So let's go into it now. The bridge section is A minor to G to F, and then F again. So that's the 4-bar pattern. Okay, so this is the crazy lick into what we're calling the first bridge. So there, A minor, G, F. And the bass wise, we're going like this. So A minor, sort of like a chromatic run down to the G. And this cool little lick where he goes ga-dong-gam. Come out of it by doing this kind of F major pickup, like baronga, baronga, just a triad kind of a thing. And then the same motif that we were doing in the verse, but an octave lower with a different figure on beat 4. So and that's a motif that's present throughout. The second part of that is similar, where we're going, except that we go, and then there's this crazy, like, very Jacko octave lick, like, and then there's another lick off the F after the F, except this time the F is like a ghost note. You're going to start it a bit earlier, and then it's going to go A, C, D. Go down, go again. We're going to do that 6th, and then instead of going, we're going to go. So see, Mark's doing all these cool things, and I did mention in the performance video that there's like half Jacko, half Jamerson thing. We haven't really gotten into a lot of the Jamerson things. There's a lot of open note pull-offs. But anyway, but back to my point. What Mark's doing here is he's setting up all these lines so that they remain interesting, and he's changing it up so that there isn't a bunch of repetition, because otherwise, because of the lack of chord movement, there's not a lot of harmonic movement, there would be too much repetition. Okay, so after we go, then we're back into, and then we're gonna go into, let me see here. So you kind of do a slide up, and you could start it here at the C sharp kind of and go. So do it, and then go up to the G, and go chromatically down to an F. So and after that, you're going to go like do-doom, do-doom, gong, gong. And then we get to the last part, so the fourth part of that, where we sort of kind of take it easy, but we change it up again because we go. So maybe a little ghost note there. So instead of going, you're going to go. And then there's kind of a simple lick. Just, we're going to keep it simple because we're going to exit this. Boop, boop, beep, boop, boom, boom. So G, G, B, G, F, F. And then another one of those triads. And then again, this motif. But then we're going to end on the G. So we're kind of announcing there. Here we come, C major, right? And here we are into a chorus. So let's listen for that. So then we get a little break here because we're into the first chorus. And I'm not going to go note for note, but if you listen carefully enough, you'll hear that he's doing just variations on what we did in the very beginning. The key thing, though, is that when we get out of it, we do a pickup on the E, G, and then we're going to go A, C, D, E. So again, we're announcing that, hey, we're going to go into the next section. And interestingly here, in the 7-inch mix, which is pretty much the official music video cut, which is what I did because, nearly 5 minutes of this was enough of a torture. I don't want to do the original 7-minute and 30-second version. In this version, there's a cut here. If you listen closely, especially if you listen to just the bass, there's a pretty nasty cut. Actually, it's amazing that it's not as noticeable, but let's see if we can hear it. So you can kind of hear, whoa, there's this influx of sound right there if you listen carefully. So that's another really tricky lick. So we're going to come out of that and go. And then it's going to go back to the that we did, but because of that cut, it goes to a low G. So okay, so I'll do that slow. So again. On those Fs, you're just going to keep it funky. And then we're into the verse 2. And here we do something really cool, and it's a little thing I want to show you about touch. So far, I've just kind of been hovering around here where I'm playing the bass, or where I'm picking here. But I'm going to show you a little trick, because into the second verse, we're going. So starting the same, but then we're going to kind of lighten our touch and go. So we can do it by keeping our touch the way it was before, but it's easier if we lighten our touch and we give it a bit more of a very warm, sort of a pillowy quality by lightening our touch and going up here. Because if you try to do it over here and you just try to pick it real hard, it doesn't feel right. It feels very jarring, right? Like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But if we go up here, we keep it, sort of bouncy. I think that just lends itself to the feel of that section a bit. more appropriately. So after that, after the we do another one of those doom diddle doom diddle. So it's AAC. And if you can't do that, see if you can just do the octave. If you get your timing right, it can still sound funky. Now if you can do the extra pull-offs, even funkier, right? Okay, so then we get into the third part of this, and it's the same beginning. And back to the bouncy thing. Except this time, you don't go. You go back to your motif. But you hit it a little softer, right? Because again, we're trying to convey this softer, sort of dreamier feeling. Just let it sing there. And then we get out of it with our last. And then there's a different pickup here. It goes. So E, G, G sharp. Then we're into the bridge. And then we're going to go back to the funky, you know, half Jamerson, half Jacko thing. We're going. And it kind of repeats there. That's just kind of one of the few times in the song where it does repeat that at least one more time. With the four notes being a little different the second time. Instead of going, it goes. So A, D, C, E. And then when you hear Simon go, and sometimes we make promises we never mean to keep, it does this cool thing. And again, it's a crazy repetition where we're on the A minor and we go. Then we go to the G. And we do the same thing. Let's try to find that.
And sometimes we make promises we never.
It's pretty cool, right? Because here you're just following like a minor seventh thing. But when you get to the G, it becomes like this cool sixth lick where you're coming up from the fifth, the D. And then after that, let me look at my music and see what we do. Oh, this is one of my favorite licks. So after the G, it's this is one of the more difficult licks because there's definitely some crazy Jamerson stuff happening here, and it goes. Bong bong bagoon gong go gee. So we're doing the F triad, but then we're going to the sixth. We're going to that D with the hammer off right there. So bom bom ba boom bom 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 bom. Really, really cool lick he does there. And then after that, okay, A, D, C, A. And then we do that crazy, super funky octave thing. It goes. I think. Let's listen. I just forgot. Yeah. And then we're on to a second chorus. And now in this second chorus, there's a bit more movement because it goes. pretty much pentatonic. We're going to do 2/16. So 1, 2, bugga bugga bet. E, G, A, G, high D, C. And then after we get out of that, we go back to a C. It kind of slides up. Back to a C. And a funky. Ga-donga down. Then we start this mega run before what I'm going to call the funky break, or what truly might be the actual bridge. I don't know. So the run up to that, and it will start on beat 3. So 1, 2. So that's C, D, E, G, A, C, D, E, G. And let's listen for that, just for fun. So there we go. There's that lick, and we're almost there. As if it weren't enough to remember all this and do all these crazy variations, Mark just goes out into left field and starts this crazy funky run. Let's listen to just a little bit of it. So I'll show you the notes, but let me point out that in this version of the song, again, the 4 minute, 45 second or so version, the funky thing really only repeats 4 times, whereas in the long version, the album version, it just goes on for quite a while, and it ends by going donky dunk dunk, actually goes to G. And then there are these crazy harmonics like I don't know, I didn't even figure it out, but that's a whole nother thing. Let's get back to this version. So in this funky thing, there are 4 of these patterns. The first one, interestingly, is slightly simplified because he goes and that would be D, E, C, D. See, you go down to that A after that, C, A. And by the way, if you're out there, Alex, my buddy Alex, him and I were discussing how you have to do it in this position down here. If you try to do it over here, it is just way too difficult. You need some serious daddy long legs fingers to do it, and I don't think it would feel or sound the same. So anyway, the first time it goes but every other time it's actually way faster than that in the sort of middle-ish section, because it goes let me try to do it slow. I don't even know if I can do it slow because I'm so used to doing it that quickly, but let's try it. That's just going to take practice, you know, and just really just being into the groove and having that just really trying to be precise. And you know, that's going to be the opposite of being nice and bouncy over here, because you're going to be over here and just you're going to be hitting it, because you're punching through there. You are everything that's happening there. So after you do that, well, I should point out that because this version is different than the album version, I snuck in a bit of the licks that he does and some that he doesn't do, like the... Those are two that he does do. I did this one because I always thought it was really cool. Boo-doo-be-doo. And then I just snuck in this really like just funny little harmonic. Biddy-goo-dee-goo. Doesn't really do that, but I wanted to sort of pay homage to the harmonics that he does do in the album version. And then I also did like a wow wow, just because it's so fun to hit the wow thing on the fretless. And then the last time when we go out of it, just for fun and because it's fretless, I did one of these, because you can do that on a fretless quite easily. So I'm just hitting the harmonic here, then pressing down lightly, and then just sliding up. So after the funky business, we go into what I just call this little post-funk section, which is really just the same chords as the bridges. So, but he does totally different notes here. He goes, so he goes, so E, A, G, F sharp. And after that, let's actually listen to it. Yeah, so it does the motifs. It goes. It does a funny little, I don't know if that was just a cut that they did when they were recording, a funny little, you know, splice, but it goes da-da. And after that, it goes, and then a chromatic. So E, F, F sharp, G. That's something we haven't exactly done thus far. And then it does this cool lick that goes. Sounds like it's going G, A, B, G to me, but it might be going like just like a hammer on here. F sharp to G. But I like to make it a little more challenging and go. And that whole section would go, I'm going to do it a little more slowly. And then we're into the last chorus. I like what he does in this last chorus because he goes away from the chromaticism here and he goes. Let's see if we can listen for that. So yeah. And here's a little more Jamerson things because we're going to bounce off this open A and go. So like bounce off that open A as a ghost note and then go to E and the G and then an octave A. And then we go. Again, bouncing off as a ghost note on this E. And there's this really weird lick here. I don't know how to describe it, but again, we're going to go bakonga. So we're going to bounce off the open A, even though we're hitting this A here on the E string. We're going to bounce off this. Bakonga. See if we can listen for that. But you don't want to do it too straight, right? You really want to keep that. It's almost like there's a shuffle feel there, an implied shuffle feel there, right? And then we get a break here because it goes. But even that is really creative. And it took me a while to not do the opposite of that. Because usually when you're doing a lick like that, you would be tempted to go, or I would be tempted to go. Or something like that. But he's hitting that A and then going back down to the octave and going. Then he goes back to a C. It's kind of a heavy vibrato there. Then. And then if you get through this last lick, you're pretty much home free because we're pretty much there at the end of the song. And it's just a little tricky because of the way it starts. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. So again, if you just remember that right after you say 3, right after you count 3, you gotta go. And maybe this is your last chance here to shine, right? I want to be a little dramatic there, right? And then we're really back to just fading out in that last chorus, or the last chorus revolutions. Just playing around there. So there we go. We got through it. Hope maybe you played along, or that you will play along. All right. Catch you next time. Bye for now.